This is the third time I've been brought back to the wealthy Johnson family. At this point, I'm too tired to fight anymore. When Emily, the fake daughter, fell down the stairs, I didn't wait for the family to blame me. I immediately confessed. I pushed her. Go ahead, punish me. I heard the whole family sigh. If only Emma was our real daughter. Instead, I ignored them and walked away. I stopped fighting, stopped going crazy. Because they favored the fake daughter over me. But now the family wouldn't let me be. Mom's eyes turned red as she questioned me. Why are you treating me like a stranger now? My older brother frowned. Are you using this trick to force us to admit we were wrong? My second brother, who hated me the most, sneered. Emma. What scheme are you plotting now? What scheme could I possibly have? I'd only been back for less than 6 months. Before being kicked out twice. I'd suffered enough. I finally got it. Instead of begging for their love, I'd rather hold tight to the luxurious life in front of me. The best educational resources. And the wealthy connections. As for the Johnson family's love, who cares about that? The third time I was brought back to the Johnson family. I complete. We gave up trying. When Emily fell down the stairs before anyone could blame me, I immediately took responsibility. Yes, I pushed her. Go ahead and punish me. My older brother, Mike, was the first to rush out of his room. He paused and looked at me. Why would we punish you? You were on the first floor. Emily was on the second floor. There's no way you pushed her. I suddenly realized something. The days I was sent back to my foster parents had been too harsh. I woke up before dawn, went to bed after midnight. Almost got kicked out of school. And nearly got sold to some old bachelor. Too much suffering makes you jumpy. Oh, right. I nodded with a sincere, polite expression. Sorry, it was kind of a reflex. Mike was stunned and didn't say anything for a long time. He also didn't lecture me like he usually did. Without question. I figured my quick confession had disrupted his usual blame routine, making him a bit annoyed, so I thoughtfully added. Should I let you go through your usual process first? Mike's frown deepened, his lips moved. But he stayed silent. Seeing he still wouldn't speak, I shrugged and turned to leave. That's when my second brother, Jake, arrived late. He glanced at me, then at Emily on the floor, and immediately exploded. Emma? You just got back and you're already bullying Emily? He glared at me, pointing angrily. Haven't you learned your lesson? Want to get kicked out of the Johnson house again? My face went pale. I looked at Mike. But he just looked away and didn't explain for me. Mrs. Johnson, who followed behind him, also avoided my eyes and to help Emily. I forced a bitter smile and looked at Jake with a flat voice. It's my fault. I shouldn't have stood at the bottom of the stairs, blocking the light and making shadows. That confused our precious Miss Johnson, so she couldn't see the steps clearly. Jake was speechless for a moment, then got even angrier. What kind of attitude is that? Go to your room and think about what you did. Mr. Johnson's angry shout followed. Okay. I didn't argue all those times I tried to defend myself before, or had only made things worse. Mrs. Johnson seemed surprised I wasn't crying and making a scene. Like before. She looked like she wanted to say something, but held back. Then Emily clutched her ankle and let out a soft cry. Mrs. Johnson immediately turned back nervously, rushing over. What's wrong, sweetheart? Where does it hurt? Let mommy see. Emma is so thoughtless, standing at the stairs, scaring people like that. Doesn't she know Emily gets scared easily? Mrs. Johnson glanced at me and complained. See? People who love you will love you no matter what. People who don't love you will find endless reasons to criticize you. Whether you're crying or being obedient. I shrugged and didn't look at them anymore. I turned and went straight to my room. I closed the door and locked it. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Listening to the laughter and chatter outside my door. I looked down. I seemed like I could never fit into this family. Whether I fought desperately for their attention or gave up like now, the result never seemed to change. I pursed my lips and climbed out of bed to spread out my practice tests. If I can't fit into their circle, there's no point forcing it. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I might as well do a few more practice problems. Let them have their fun. I'm going to secretly outwork everyone. The first time I stepped into the Johnson house, I knew I didn't belong. I wore dirty sneakers and faded old-school uniform, looking completely out of place. Emily stood across from me in a pink princess dress, with my older and second brothers on either side of her, like guardian angels. When they saw me, there wasn't a trace of joy in their eyes. Especially my second brother, Jake. He protected Emily behind him, looking completely defensive, as if I was a thief, coming to steal everything from his precious sister. I couldn't understand it. I was the one related to them by blood. I was their real sister. Emily should have been the one who stole my life. But nobody thought that way. At least the Johnson family did. And Emily was excellent at everything. She could play piano, do ballet. And her grades were decent, too. Who wouldn't love such a talented child? The Johnson family was no exception. The dinner table was always filled with their praise for her. Emily won first place in the dance competition. Emily got invited to perform piano again. Emily ranked in the top 300 in her class this time. Amazing. Nobody paid attention to me. The ugly duckling. Even Mrs. Johnson, who had been most excited to see me at first, was the same way. She would instinctively serve Emily food first. She would smile especially warmly when Emily acted cute. She would automatically pick Emily's favorite colors when shopping. I suddenly realized I might never be able to compete with Emily. We grew up in completely different environments, with vastly different resources. I had no special talents. The only thing I could be proud of was my grades. I worked incredibly hard to adapt to the new school's teaching style. During that time, I only slept 3 hours a night. Finally, on the final exam, I ranked in the top 10 of my grade. It wasn't like my old days of dominating first place in my county school. But for someone who just came to the big city, it wasn't easy. More importantly, I finally had something I could beat Emily at. That day, I held my report card with sweaty palms, almost able to imagine my parents' surprised delight, and my brother's praise and recognition. But what waited for me wasn't praise. It was punishment. All because of Emily's innocent comment. How could sister improve so fast? She used to study in the county. Everyone said this test was really hard. Could she have cheated? The Johnson family couldn't believe I could be better than Emily, who they had raised and taught themselves. Nobody wanted to spend even a moment investigating. They all immediately decided I had cheated. Mr. Johnson slapped me hard across the face. Mrs. Johnson hugged the frightened Emily and looked at me with heartbreak. Emma, you can have bad grades, but the Johnson family will never have a child who cheats. That was the first time I got kicked out for having bad character and taking shortcuts. The second time I was brought back to the Johnson family. I learned to keep quiet until the recognition banquet. Emily framed me for stealing her necklace. I immediately produced evidence and proved my innocence. I thought I had one at least. I didn't let the Johnson family lose face because of me. But Mr. Johnson called me into his study. His first words were, "Do you know how much you embarrassed the Johnson family today?" I stared at him in shock. "Even if Emily accidentally wronged you, couldn't you handle it privately? Did you have to make a scene in front of all the guests?" Mr. Johnson rubbed his temples tiredly. "But Emily obviously did it on purpose," I stammered. Mrs. Johnson slapped me in frustration. "Emma, why do you have to keep with Emily over everything?" My lips were trembling then. So I should just sit there in front of everyone and accept being called a thief? They looked at me silently. Their expressions weren't guilt or heartbreak, but disappointment. So I got kicked out a second time. For not knowing how to back down? For not considering the bigger shore. The next morning, I walked out with my backpack and saw Mike's car parked outside. He and Jake were already sitting inside. The next second, Emily ran past me from behind, opened the car door, and jumped in. I instinctively stopped walking. As usual, Mike's car was specifically for driving Emily to school. I was supposed to be driven by the family driver. But Mike didn't start the car. I could feel his gaze on me through the car window. I kept my eyes down, adjusting my backpack straps, pretending not to notice. "Mike, aren't we leaving? I'm going to be late," Emily complained impatiently. Mike hummed and suddenly said to me, "Aren't you getting in?" I looked up and met his eyes. I glanced at Emily's pouting face and shook my head. "No thanks. I'll wait for the driver." When I first came back, I did ride in Mike's car. But that same night, Emily broke out in red rashes from a bacterial allergy. She didn't say anything directly, but her expression and the Johnson family's thoughtful looks were enough for me to understand. They thought I was dirty. Mike was quiet for a moment, then said, "Get in the car." The driver called in sick. I was stunned. Called in sick? But nobody told me. I stood there, frozen on the gravel driveway, the morning mist still clinging to the manicured hedges of the Johnson estate. The driver called in sick? And nobody thought to tell the daughter who actually needed to get to school? It was just another invisible paper cut in 1,000 cut death by neglect. "Get in, Emma," Mike repeated, his tone carrying that familiar edge of impatience, as if my mere existence was an inconvenience he was forced to manage. I looked at the sleek black SUV. Emily was in the passenger seat, her designer backpack resting on her lap, her lips pressed into a thin, annoyed line. Jake was in the back, already scrolling through his phone, not even bothering to look up. If I got in that car, the air would be thick with unspoken resentment. Every bump in the road would be a reminder that I was intruding on their space. If Emily sneezed, it would be my fault for bringing in dust. If Jake sighed, it would be because my breathing was too loud. I adjusted my backpack straps again, feeling the heavy weight of my textbooks. "No thanks," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'll take the bus. The stop is just down the hill." Mike's brow furrowed. "The bus? It's a 20-minute walk to the gate, and the bus takes another 40 minutes. You'll be late." "Then I'll be late," I replied evenly. I didn't wait for his response. I just turned and started walking down the long, winding driveway. "Emma, stop being so dramatic and get in the car," Mike called out, rolling down the window. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. The sound of his engine starting and the crunch of tires on gravel told me they had given up. As the SUV rolled past me, I didn't even glance at it. The walk down the hill was quiet. The air was crisp, and for the first time in a long time, my chest didn't feel tight with anxiety. This was my new strategy: total emotional detachment. The Johnson family was a sinking ship of toxic dynamics, and I was done bailing water. I was just going to secure my own life vest and wait for the rescue boat, which, in my case, was a full-ride scholarship to a top-tier university. I made it to the bus stop just as the yellow vehicle pulled up. I paid my fare, found a seat in the back, and pulled out my vocabulary flashcards. I had an English literature test first period. I arrived at school 15 minutes late. The hallway was empty, the lockers silent. I slipped into my classroom, handed the teacher a tardy slip I had grabbed from the office, and took my seat at the back. Emily, who sat 2 rows ahead of me, turned around and gave me a look of pure, unadulterated pity. It was a look designed to make me feel small. A year ago, it would have worked. Today, I just blinked at her, opened my textbook, and started taking notes. At lunch, the social hierarchy of the elite private school was on full display. Emily sat at the center table in the cafeteria, surrounded by her orbit of wealthy, beautiful friends. Jake, who was a senior and the captain of the basketball team, sat a few tables over, occasionally throwing his sister an affectionate smile. I sat alone at a small table near the library entrance. I had a homemade sandwich, peanut butter and jelly, made with ingredients I bought with my own meager allowance, and a thermos of water. I was reviewing my AP Physics notes when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up. It was Liam Parker. Liam was the school's undisputed academic star. He was quiet, intensely focused, and came from a family whose wealth made the Johnsons look like middle-class suburbanites. But unlike the Johnsons, the Parkers were famously low-profile. Liam didn't wear designer logos, he wore plain black hoodies and carried a battered messenger bag. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I looked around the nearly empty area. "No." "Go ahead." He sat down, pulled out a thick textbook on advanced calculus, and started reading while eating a perfectly cubed salad. We sat in silence for 10 minutes. It was surprisingly comfortable. "You're Emma, right?" he suddenly asked, not looking up from his book. "Yes." "I saw your physics exam score posted on Mr. Harrison's board," he said. "You got a 98. I got a 97. I paused mid-bite. "Is that a complaint?" He finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting mine. "No. It's an observation. You're the only person who has beaten me in physics since sophomore year." He paused, then added, "Emily Johnson's sister." "Biological sister," I corrected automatically, a bitter habit. "But we're not exactly close." "I gathered," Liam said, his gaze drifting toward the center table where Emily was laughing loudly at a joke someone made. "She talks a lot." "You don't." "I prefer the latter." He went back to his calculus book. I went back to my sandwich. That was the entirety of our interaction, but as the bell rang and I packed up my bag, I realized something profound. For the first time since coming to this school, someone had noticed me for me. Not as the dirty girl from the country, not as Emily's weird, jealous shadow, but as the girl who scored a 98 in AP Physics. That afternoon, I stayed late in the library. I had decided to enter the National Science Olympiad. The prize was a $50,000 scholarship and guaranteed admission to several Ivy League programs. If I won, I wouldn't need a dime of the Johnson family's money for college. I could walk out of their front door the day after graduation and never look back. By the time I took the bus home, it was past 7 p.m. The house was brightly lit when I walked through the door. "Where have you been?" Mrs. Johnson was standing in the foyer, her arms crossed, her face tight with worry and anger. Mike and Jake were sitting in the living room, and Emily was curled up on the sofa, looking distressed. "School library," I said, slipping off my shoes and lining them up neatly. "You didn't answer your phone." "We've been worried sick." Mrs. Johnson scolded, her voice rising. "Mike said you refused to get in the car this morning and walked off. Do you know how dangerous it is for a young girl to be wandering around alone? And then you don't even have the decency to text us when you're going to be late?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen was black. Battery died. Sorry. Sorry? Jake scoffed, standing up. Is that all you have to say? Mom was about to call the police, Emma. You're so incredibly selfish. You just want attention, don't you? You act out because Emily gets a ride and you have to take the bus, so you disappear to make everyone panic. I looked at Jake, then at Mrs. Johnson, and finally at Emily, who was peeking at me over the edge of a throw pillow. I'm not acting out, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I had to study for the science Olympiad. I lost track of time. I apologize for causing you worry. It won't happen again. I'll make sure to charge my phone. I bypassed them and headed for the stairs. Emma, stop right there. Mike commanded, stepping into my path. He looked down at me, his jaw set. What is going on with you? Ever since yesterday, you've been acting weird. You're too quiet. You're brushing us off. If you're mad about the stairs incident with Emily, just say it. I confessed to the stairs incident, Mike. Remember? I looked him dead in the eye. I said I pushed her. What more do you want from me? You didn't push me. Emily suddenly cried out from the sofa. Everyone turned to look at her. She shrank back, her eyes welling with tears. I tripped. Emma was just standing there. I got scared by the shadow and lost my footing. She didn't touch me. The room went dead silent. Mrs. Johnson looked at Emily in shock. Sweetheart, why didn't you say that yesterday? Because you were all yelling at Emma. Emily sobbed, burying her face in her hands. And Emma just admitted to it. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. It was a brilliant performance. The victim, confused by the chaos, too fragile to speak up against the aggressively compliant villain. Jake immediately rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her. Shoo, Em, it's okay. It's not your fault. Emma is manipulative. She confessed just to make us look like the bad guys for doubting her. I actually laughed. A short, dry chuckle that echoed in the silent foyer. Manipulative, I repeated, tasting the word. Right. I confessed to a crime I didn't commit to manipulate you into. What, exactly? Punishing me? Because that's what usually happens. Emma. Mrs. Johnson started, taking a step toward me, a flash of genuine guilt crossing her face. It's fine, Mrs. Johnson, I said, stepping back. I didn't call her Mom. I hadn't since the second time they kicked me out. Emily cleared it up. Nobody pushed anybody. I'm going to my room to study. Have a good night. I walked upstairs, went into my room, and locked the door. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. The next few months fell into a strange, cold routine. I became a ghost in the Johnson house. I woke up at 5 a.m., studied until 6:30, ate breakfast alone before anyone else woke up, and took the bus to school. I stayed at the library until it closed, then took the bus home, went straight to my room, and studied until midnight. I stopped joining them for family dinners. When Mrs. Johnson knocked on my door to call me down, I would politely decline, saying I had too much homework. Eventually, she stopped knocking. I stopped trying to engage in conversations with Mike and Jake. If we crossed paths in the hallway, I gave a brief nod and kept walking. If Emily tried to initiate her passive-aggressive banter, I simply agreed with whatever she said and walked away. Emma, that sweater looks a little worn out, don't you think? Yes, it does. Excuse me. Emma, Mom bought me this new Chanel bag. Do you want my old Prada one? I know you don't have nice things. No thank you, Emily. Keep it as a spare. My complete lack of reaction seemed to unnerve them. It was like they were playing tennis against a brick wall. The ball just kept bouncing back, dead and devoid of energy. Meanwhile, my life outside the Johnson house was flourishing in a quiet, intense way. Liam and I became study partners. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We both occupied the same quiet corner of the library every day. Eventually, we started sharing notes. Then, we started testing each other. Liam was brilliant, but he was also incredibly observant. He noticed things about me that the Johnsons never bothered to see. He noticed that I always organized my pens by color. He noticed that I rubbed my left temple when I was stuck on a difficult physics problem. He noticed that my sneakers were falling apart, and the next day, a brand new pair of high-end running shoes in my exact size appeared on my library desk with a sticky note that read, "Brand sponsor sent extras. Not my color. Throw them away if you don't want them." I knew Liam's family didn't have a shoe sponsorship. I also knew a peace offering when I saw one. I wore the shoes. They felt like walking on clouds. "You're avoiding them," Liam said one evening in late November, looking up from his laptop. "Avoiding who?" I asked, highlighting a passage in my biology textbook. "Your family. You spend 12 hours a day at this school. You only go home to sleep." "They're not my family, Liam. They're my biological relatives. There's a difference." I closed the book and sighed. I'm just playing the long game. 7 more months until graduation. Then I'm gone. Where to? MIT, hopefully. Or Stanford. Wherever the scholarship money takes me. Liam nodded slowly. I'm applying to MIT too. Early decision. I looked at him, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. Then I guess I'll have to beat you there, too. He smirked. Bring it on, country girl. The breaking point for the Johnson family came during the week of Thanksgiving. It was tradition for the Johnsons to host a massive, opulent Thanksgiving dinner for their extended family and business associates. It was a networking event disguised as a holiday. Mrs. Johnson cornered me in the kitchen on Wednesday night. "Emma, I've laid out a dress for you in your room," she said, her tone attempting to be casual but failing. "It's emerald green. It will match Emily's ruby red dress beautifully. We're taking a family portrait before the guests arrive at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Please be on time." "I have a mock exam for the Olympiad tomorrow afternoon," I said, pouring myself a glass of water. "I won't be back until 6 o'clock. Mrs. Johnson's face tightened. "Emma, it's Thanksgiving. It's a family holiday. You can't miss the family portrait." "I'm not missing it," I said calmly. "I'm just not participating. You have beautiful portraits from the years before I arrived. Just use those. You are a member of this family," she snapped, her frustration finally boiling over. "Why are you acting like a hotel guest? You don't talk to us, you don't eat with us, you don't let us buy you anything. Your brothers miss you. Emily tries to connect with you, and you just ice her out. What do we have to do to make you happy?" I slowly put the glass down on the marble counter. I looked at Mrs. Johnson. She looked genuinely distressed, which only made me feel a profound, hollow sadness. "Mrs. Johnson," I said quietly. "The first time I came here, I tried to be happy. I showed you my report card, hoping you'd be proud of me. My father slapped me and called me a cheat. The second time I came here, I tried to protect myself. I proved I didn't steal Emily's necklace. You slapped me and kicked me out for embarrassing you. The third time, I realized my happiness doesn't matter to this family. The only thing that matters is the status quo. Emily is the perfect daughter. Mike is the responsible heir. Jake is the protective athlete. And me? I'm the inconvenient glitch." "That's not true," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "We love you. You're my flesh and blood." "Flesh and blood doesn't mean love," I said softly. It just means biology. I'm not angry anymore, Mrs. Johnson. I really am not. I'm just tired. I will attend the dinner at 6 o'clock. But I cannot miss this mock exam. My future depends on it. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, a hand pressed to her mouth. I took the mock exam the next day. I scored the highest in the district. Liam came in second by 2 points. He bought me a coffee to celebrate, and we sat on the cold bleachers of the empty football field, watching the sunset. You should come to Boston with me for the finals, he said quietly, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. My parents are flying up. We have extra room on the plane. I appreciate it, Liam, but the school is paying for my flight. I need to do this on my own. He looked at me, his dark eyes intense. You don't always have to do everything on your own, Emma. Sometimes, it's okay to let people help. I looked down at my hands. When I let people help, they usually expect something in return. Or they use it against me. Liam reached over and gently took my hand. His fingers were warm. I don't expect anything. I just want you there. My heart did a strange, unfamiliar flutter. Okay, I whispered. I'll think about it. I arrived back at the Johnson estate at exactly 6 p.m. The driveway was packed with luxury cars. I slipped in through the side door, went up to my room, and put on the emerald green dress Mrs. Johnson had left for me. It was beautiful, admittedly. It fit perfectly. I walked downstairs and entered the grand dining hall. The room was buzzing with dozens of people. At the head of the long table sat Mr. Johnson, holding court with a group of investors. Mrs. Johnson was chatting with her socialite friends. Emily was surrounded by her cousins, looking radiant in red. I quietly took an empty seat near the far end of the table, next to an older aunt I barely recognized. Dinner commenced. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed. I ate silently, answering questions with polite, brief responses. Halfway through the meal, Mr. Johnson stood up and tapped his champagne glass with a silver spoon. The room quieted down. Family, friends, thank you all for being here, Mr. Johnson began, his voice booming with patriarchal authority. This year has been full of blessings. Mike successfully closed his first major acquisition for the firm. Jake secured a full athletic scholarship to Duke. Cheers and applause erupted. Mike and Jake raised their glasses. And of course, Mr. Johnson continued, beaming at Emily. Our beautiful Emily was just accepted into the Juilliard pre-college program for piano. We couldn't be more proud of the young woman she is becoming. More applause. Emily blushed prettily and blew a kiss to her father. Mr. Johnson raised his glass higher. To family. To success. To the Johnsons. To the Johnsons, the crowd echoed. I raised my water glass, took a sip, and put it down. I wasn't mentioned. Not a single word. I had scored the highest in the district for the hardest academic competition in the country, and I was entirely invisible. But sitting there, listening to the cheers, I felt a strange sense of liberation. It didn't hurt anymore. The wound had finally scarred over. I didn't need their validation because their validation was cheap. It was based on appearances, on performance, on playing a role in a carefully curated script. I wasn't in their script. And that was fine. I was writing my own. The National Science Olympiad finals were held in Boston in March. I didn't tell the Johnsons I was going. I simply packed a small duffel bag, left a note on the kitchen counter saying I had a weekend academic trip, and took an Uber to the airport. Liam was waiting for me at the gate. He smiled when he saw me, taking my bag. You came. I told you I would, I said, feeling a surge of nervous excitement. The weekend in Boston was a blur of intense focus, grueling written exams, and high-pressure lab presentations. Liam and I were a synchronized unit. We didn't even need to speak, We just anticipated each other's moves in the chemistry lab and the engineering build. On Sunday evening, we stood in the grand auditorium of MIT, waiting for the results. When the announcer called our school's name for first place overall, I froze. Liam didn't. He grabbed my hand, his face breaking into a massive, rare grin, and pulled me onto the stage. We were handed a massive plaque and oversized novelty checks for $50,000 each. The MIT admissions director shook my hand and handed me a thick, sealed envelope. "Welcome to the family, Miss Johnson." I held the envelope, tears finally pricking my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of absolute, overwhelming triumph. I had done it. I had bought my freedom. Liam hugged me tightly on the stage, lifting me off the ground. "You did it, country girl. We did it." I flew back home on Monday morning. I took a cab straight to the Johnson estate. I needed to pack. I wasn't going to wait until graduation. I had the scholarship money, I had the admission letter. I was legally 18 as of last month. There was no reason to stay in this mausoleum of a house any longer. I walked through the front door. The house was unusually quiet. I found Mrs. Johnson sitting at the kitchen island, staring blankly at a tablet. She looked up when I walked in, her face pale. "Emma," she whispered. "Hello," I said, walking toward the stairs. "I'll be out of your hair by tonight. I'm packing my things." "Wait," she said, standing up so fast her stool scraped loudly against the tile. "Emma, please. Look at this." She turned the tablet toward me. It was a local news website. The headline read, "Local geniuses take national gold. Liam Parker and Emma Johnson secure first place at National Science Olympiad." Below the headline was a picture of Liam and me on stage, holding our checks, laughing. You won a national championship?" Mrs. Johnson asked, her voice trembling. "You got a full scholarship to MIT?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I did." "Why didn't you tell us?" she cried, her voice cracking. "Why didn't you say anything? We would have flown to Boston. We would have thrown a party. Your father just saw this on his newsfeed. He's devastated, Emma. He feels like a fool because his business partners called to congratulate him, and he didn't even know his own daughter was competing." I looked at her, feeling a cold detachment. "He feels like a fool because it impacts his image, Mrs. Johnson. Not because he cares about my achievements. If I had told him I was competing, he would have ignored it unless I won. I didn't want my victory to be another trophy on his mantle. I earned this. For me." "Emma, please," a voice said from the doorway. I turned. Mike and Jake were standing there. Mike looked completely shattered. Jake looked like he had been punched in the gut. "We messed up," Mike said, his voice thick. He walked slowly toward me. "We messed up so badly. We were so busy protecting Emily because she was fragile, because we grew up with her, that we forgot you were our sister. We treated you like an intruder. We bullied you. I am so sorry." Jake swallowed hard, looking at the floor. "I was an idiot. I was jealous, I think. You were so smart, and you didn't need us. Emily needed us. It made us feel important. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry." I stood there, listening to the apologies I had dreamed of hearing for 2 years. And I felt nothing. It was too late. The bridge wasn't just burned, the ashes had blown away in the wind. "I appreciate your apologies," I said quietly. "I really do. It gives me closure. But it doesn't change anything. You can't unslap me. You can't unkick me out. You can't erase the nights I spent crying myself to sleep wondering why my own flesh and blood despised me. Emma, don't leave, Mrs. Johnson sobbed, reaching out to grab my hand. Please. Let us make it up to you. We'll pay for everything. We'll buy you a condo in Boston. We'll do family counseling. Just don't cut us out. I gently pulled my hand from her grasp. I don't need your money, Mrs. Johnson. I have my own. And I don't need a condo. I'm staying in the dorms. What about Emily? Jake asked desperately. She's upstairs crying. She saw the news. She feels terrible. Emily doesn't feel terrible for me, I said, a small, sad smile crossing my face. Emily feels terrible because the spotlight shifted. Tell her not to worry. The stage is all hers again. I walked upstairs. I packed my duffel bag with the few things I actually cared about, my books, my laptop, my worn-out sneakers, and the new ones Liam gave me. I left the designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, and the emerald green dress hanging in the closet. When I walked back downstairs, Mr. Johnson was standing in the foyer. He looked older, somehow. Deflated. He looked at my bag. Are you really doing this, Emma? Walking away from your family? I'm walking toward my future, Mr. Johnson, I said, looking him in the eye without flinching. Goodbye. I walked out the front door. The spring air was warm and smelled like rain. I walked down the long, winding gravel driveway one last time. I didn't look back at the massive mansion. I didn't look back at the family standing in the doorway, watching me leave. When I reached the bottom of the hill, a black car was waiting at the curb. Liam was leaning against the hood, a gentle smile on his face. He opened the passenger door for me. Ready to go, MIT? I tossed my bag into the back seat and looked up at the sky. The clouds were breaking, letting the afternoon sun shine through. Yeah, I said, getting into the car. I'm ready. And for the first time in my life, I truly was.